Welcome to the AutoParent podcast with my mom.
Hello, and welcome to the AutoParent podcast, episode 34, which we're calling Enneagram and Parenting. I was trying to think of a good pun, like Enneagram. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter how I try. Like, it doesn't work. Enneagram and Parenting. And I'm your host, Pastor Casey Van Atta Casebeer, and y'all know me. So we're going to get to our special guest for this episode, which you can already see, and I'm so excited about it. First, I want to share with you one of her Instagram posts that it really spoke to me, and it sort of invited me to reach out to her to get her on the podcast. And it's such an amazing gift that she's here. So she says in this Instagram post, "Yesterday, I apologized for being in this woman's way while I was trying to get her child situated." She said, "Don't apologize at all. You're a new mom." And she says, "I haven't stopped thinking about that comment. I think our society lets us be, quote, new moms, unquote, for a month or two, and then we have to move on. Go back to work or don't. Become an expert in every single thing about parenting. Have the perfect nursery. Lose all of the baby weight. But we're still new moms. Give new moms the time they deserve. Everyone is just trying to figure it out." Our special guest is Ashton Whitmoyer-Ober, and she is a writer, public speaker, community psychologist, certified Enneagram coach, and advocate for the underdog. She is a part-time professor and has her own Enneagram and life coaching business, Enneagram Ashton. She is the author of Enneagram for Relationships and The Two of Us, a 3-year couples journal, which you can see on the shelf behind her. And she's a mom. Welcome to the podcast. It is so good to see you, and I'm so thankful that you're doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was excited you reached out.
All right, so we're going to get right into it because this is just how we do things around here on the AutoParent podcast. I'm going to ask you our special guest questions. So just right off the top, like the easiest way to get to know somebody is to find out what their biggest pet peeve is. So what, Ashton, is your biggest pet peeve?
You know, when I was thinking about this, I was like, wow, I have so many pet peeves. And I don't think I knew how many pet peeves I had until I was thinking about it. I am a big rule follower, so it is a pet peeve of mine when people like cut in line or like don't wait their turn. But I would have to say that I live in Amish country, and so horse and buggies on the road is a big pet peeve. They slow everything down. I appreciate them for what they are, but I just like to get places. So maybe slow drivers, and then we can like throw in horse and buggies with that because they're slow drivers.
That's true. Yeah, they are slow drivers indeed.
Yeah.
I also am a rule follower. And this is funny that you mentioned this. So we're just going to go ahead and like get it out of the way. I'm a 1 on the Enneagram.
Okay.
And
cool.
I actually yesterday was in a little bit of a fender bender, and I didn't know if I was going to talk about this, but I think I will, just because you brought this up about being on the road and being a rule follower. So there was this Uber driver that was sort of like had pulled off to like pick somebody up, and they're like the butt of their vehicle was in the lane that I was in. And there was a car in front of me that wound up being able to get over. But when I looked up to get over, like there was a car over here in this lane, so I couldn't get over. So I like sideswiped this Uber driver whose butt was in my lane. And this is where that's not really the irritating part, but the pet peeve comes in with like the rule following thing. So this Uber driver that I hit kept asking me to take a photo of my driver's license. And I was like, listen, ma'am, like in no way, shape, or form am I going to give you a photocopy of my driver's license. Like,
right.
Am I like going to let you steal my identity? Like, this is not happening. Yeah. And it was it just like over and over and over again. And like the police showed up, and like they don't, file a case or whatever unless there's bodily injury. And so they were like, we can't hold her here. Like, we don't know what you want from us, but she's not giving you a copy of her license. And I called my partner who is a 6 on the Enneagram. And he was like, oh my God, like I would have panicked and I would have just given her everything. Like if she had asked me for my social security number, I would have given her that.
Yeah. Yeah. My partner's also a 6, so I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So biggest pet peeve, slow drivers. Also,
lots of driving situations, apparently.
That's right. That's right.
So funny.
Okay. So another question that we like to ask, and I always like to preface it by saying it does not have to be a good story. In fact, that's mostly what makes it funny, is remembering a time that you've laughed really, really hard, or perhaps if you can remember the hardest time that you've ever laughed.
I feel like this was such a hard question because like I laugh a lot, like laughing comes naturally to me. And so I feel like that's hard to, think about what the absolute hardest time that I've laughed is. And I feel like it's more like situational for me, like when I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. So when we're all together with our families now, like we just laugh the whole time. Or when I'm with my college friends, like all we do is laugh. I can think about times, growing up when I feel like every time as a little girl and my mom would go to the bathroom with me, like every time there was some sort of situation that would have us like cracking up. And so I feel like I don't have like a specific story tied to laughing the hardest because I can think of so many times that I just have laughed. I know that's not the answer you want or you're looking for.
Well, it's good, right? Because there are people who sort of have a disposition toward humor or laughter, just in the way that they are in the world, which is a beautiful thing. I can get into stitches and into like I cry when I laugh quite frequently.
Oh yeah, me too.
Really quickly.
Yeah, just yesterday, my mom, she's been like cleaning out her house for what feels like months and finding memories. And every time she comes over here, she brings over like a pile of things that I do not want, right? But she's passing on. And she was showing me this like self-portrait that I drew of myself, obviously self-portrait. And it was horrible. Okay. Like I was probably in like 4th grade. The nostrils didn't even look like a nose at all. And so I literally was like, we were looking at like me, what I look like versus this self-portrait. And just like, we both were in tears laughing at how I thought that this looked like me, because I'm going to show it on my Instagram later because I know she brought it over today. And it's remarkable how not like me it looks.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. I remember writing a story. This will tell you about my childhood a little bit. I remember writing like my first story. I think I was maybe like 4 or 5 years old, and the story was called "The Bear That Nobody Watted." WATTED. It was supposed to be wanted, which is like sad and forlorn
that
anyway.
Is so sad. Yeah. The bear that nobody wanted. That is so depressing.
Isn't that awful? But anyway, I saw it. We moved not that long ago, and I saw it, as I was like thumbing through some stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I looked at some of the illustrations and I was like, ooh, this is terrifying. And we had a good laugh about it too.
Oh, yeah. I remember finding my creative writing journal from like my creative writing class in high school, and like all of the poems were like about the hot guy that sat in front of me in class. And every now and then, if I need a good laugh, my friends and I will just pull it out and be like, what is that guy up to today? Did he know that Ashton was creepily writing about him from sitting behind him?
Right. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. The amount of bad poetry I have sitting in folders somewhere is hilarious.
Yes.
Okay. Well, now it's time to do a segment that we love around here on the podcast called Parenting Fails, Confessions, and Wins. We'll start first with parenting fails. I'll just come out of the gate with one that happened really recently. And you know what? I'm not mad at it. So we have a pool in our apartment complex, and the kids obviously like love to go to the pool. And so we go up there and we'll spend hours and hours. And so there's a couple of fails happening. Number one, I'm terrible at reapplying sunscreen. Like, I feel like it's a myth, even though it's not. I know it's real. I know I should be doing it. I feel like a terrible mom, but also it's like impossible. What are you going to do? Like spray sunscreen onto a slippery, wet kid who's like, who's running all over, like it just doesn't work. So I did not reapply sunscreen. And my youngest is like, he's so tan, but his little bitty nose was burned and started to peel. No. And I was like, oh, terrible mom. And then that same day, the kids, like, we had been at the pool for like 2.5 hours, and they both get out and they're like, we're hungry. Like, we're so hungry. And I realized that I had brought like no snacks at the pool. Oh, no. And swimming makes kids hungry. And I felt horrible. I was like, well, I don't have any food, so y'all can keep swimming or we can leave, but there's no in between. So they kept swimming, and then they had a big dinner and everything worked out, but I felt horrible on both counts. Yeah. So there's a couple of fails for you. What do you have?
So a lot, because my baby is 7.5 months old, and I'm a first time mom, and I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. So a lot of fails have happened. Like so many that I could probably tell you like 25 stories right now. But the one that sticks out to me is, do you know what Duck Donuts is?
No, I don't. Tell me.
Duck Donuts is this donut shop. It's amazing. I don't even know how to explain it. It like melts in your mouth, and they specialize in like different donut toppings. So like it's almost like a create your own donut, where you can do like vanilla icing with Oreo crumbles and then like a glaze on top or something like that. Anyways, so on Father's Day, which also happened to be my husband's birthday, he was like, I want Duck Donuts. And we're like, why would we ever try to go somewhere on Father's Day? Like first mistake. But I was like, well, I just fed her and, we'll be fine just to run over there. And we ended up waiting so long for these freaking donuts. I was like, you better enjoy every single like bite of this donut for all of eternity, because I didn't bring a bottle. I didn't bring diapers. Like, I didn't bring anything. And turns out we were there for hours trying to get these donuts that I had to like run to the nearest Walmart to be like, let me get something to nourish our daughter here. Yep. So same day, we go to this like beer garden fest for his birthday, forgot diapers again. Like, what? Like literally same day. So
I've done that countless times. And more so too as they get older, because we're still potty training our second one. He's 3 and just relentless. So we'll go somewhere not thinking about it and not bring anything with us, and then he'll have an accident, and I'm like, well, what are we gonna do? So we like have to pull off and stop at like Walmart or some other like box store and support that nonsense to buy just a pair of shorts so that my kid's not walking around in like accident clothes. But I
literally was like, I don't even go to Walmart. I was like, I don't even go to Walmart, but I guess I'm going to Walmart today.
Exactly. I guess we're going to Walmart. I remember doing that really early on, actually, with my first child, Cash, who is 6 now. We were just going to go like, it's always like good intention. We're just going to go right up the road. No big deal. I was like, not a problem. And, we talk about everything on this podcast, so I'm just going to lay it out. Like I struggled breastfeeding really hardcore. But it was something that I was still trying to do. And I was pumping a lot. So I was feeding him breast milk, but it was hard for him to actually latch and to do all of that. And so it was like this really sort of visceral, like animalistic moment where I had no food for my child. And I was like, well, we're just going to I'm going to try to feed you with my body right now. And we're going to try to do this thing. And it was enough, it was enough to hold him over until we could get home. But it really, that's so funny. I don't think I've told that story. I know I haven't told it on the podcast and I haven't thought about it in a really long time, but it is funny how that instinct sort of kicks in where you're like, we got to do it, in the midst of perhaps, making a choice, whether it's good or bad, just making a choice and realizing that, we found ourselves here. And then just letting that instinct take over.
Yep.
All right. So crazy. Let's do some parenting confessions. People oftentimes ask, what's the difference between a fail and a confession? And I often just say that confessions are things that we hide from our kids or lie to our kids about, which as they get older is easier to do. And so my confession is real simple. And that's that our 6-year-old has a Nintendo Switch. And the other day I noticed that it belongs to the family, but he's the one who plays it the most. And the other day I realized that he was kind of on it a little bit more than I wanted him to be. And we usually don't have a problem with screen time with him because our kids are very active. They have a nanny who takes them and they do all kinds of things. So he's usually not super into screen time, but I did notice that he had been on his Switch a lot lately. So I just took it and hid it from him. And then I didn't tell him and he hasn't asked for it. So I feel like it's kind of a win. Yeah. And a confession. Yeah. I feel like one day he's going to be like, oh yeah, didn't I have a Nintendo Switch somewhere and go looking for it, but I just hid it from him and he hasn't noticed. So it's, it's working out so far.
That's amazing. So for me, she's so young. It's like, what am I really doing? But I guess I do hide her peanut butter puffs from her. I can't give them to her until she eats other things or else that's all she wants. So I'll sneakily carry the bag over and hide it until she's eaten, what I think is acceptable. And then I can bring out the puffs. But she's so young. It's I don't really, keep a lot of stuff from her because there's not really much to keep.
Yeah, that is true, though. I know the puffs were a big thing in our household, too. So we would have to do the same thing, sort of covert. Or even if we were at the store, I remember we would have to sneak them in behind the basket or keep them away so that they couldn't see them and want to open them right then.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So this is the best part. This is parenting wins. My parenting win is a survival win today. So my nanny has been unavailable for the first 3 days of this week. So I have survived without childcare for the last 3 days. I have managed to get a little bit done, not as much done as I'd want to get done, but work and the kids and survive. And today I am here with you and it's beautiful and my kids are nowhere to be found and I can take a deep breath knowing that they're safe. And not with me. And are you getting the picture? I'm alone.
And you did it.
I'm not with my kids. And I did it. So that's my win.
Congrats.
That's my win.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel like my win, you had told people that I'm a part-time professor. And so I had my baby December 1st and then the semester started February 1st. So I went back to work after 8 weeks and I honestly don't know how I survived the spring semester. I was an exclusive pumper. And so I would have to pump all the time pretty much. And, would have to remember all the pump parts and then be on campus multiple days a week. And it was, probably the most challenging thing I've ever done. But when I, submitted my final grades in May, I was like, holy crap, I cannot believe I did it. And I honestly was really proud of myself for going back to work so early and doing it and getting it done, but I would 10 out of 10 not recommend going back that early. So never again am I doing that. And if you're listening and you are able to take time off, I would suggest doing it. But know that you can make it work if you can't.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I just want to say too, like, exclusively pumping is so hard. Like, as somebody who exclusively pumped for 2 kids and did so for as long as I could, like, all the things that you're saying about like the stuff that's required, like there's bags, there's storage, there's like specific type of gear and bras, and like all of that is so intense. And managing to do that multiple times a day, every day, so consistently, sometimes, I don't know if this was your experience, but sometimes just like in a back corner somewhere, is a huge feat.
Totally. Yeah. And I wouldn't even have time to make it back to my office in between classes. So I would go I'd have to use a single stall bathroom. And, some people are gross. That's all I'll say.
That's true. Yeah. It also does make me, it reminds me that like there are some organizations and institutions that need to be better about providing space for birthing persons and parents to be able to do this kind of important stuff. That's something that I'm thinking about. I also, just to relate to you a little bit more, my second child was born December 22nd. I think that's his birthday. That's his birthday, December 22nd. And I was, I don't know, for some reason decided to have a child in the middle of getting a master's degree. And so had him, I was in seminary at Duke. My classes started the first week of January. So I was 2 weeks out from having a baby. And I remember having a conversation with like, trusted partners and like family. And I was like, can I do this? Should I do this? And I was a college athlete. I played basketball. And actually, you know what? This is kind of fitting, thinking about Simone Biles and her amazing and wonderful witness to what mental health means, and her ability to stand up and say, no more. But I had the kind of mindset that a lot of these athletes have, which is to just kind of push through. And so everything that you were saying about like not recommending doing this, I feel the same way. And yet I did, I pushed through, I did it. I felt proud. There are moments where I think, oh, I can't believe I did that. And also like my mental health was not solid. I wasn't able to sort of bond and spend enough time with him in the way that I felt like I needed to. There were all kinds of things that I sacrificed for that moment. And so, I relate to you hard in that regard.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also had a C-section. So it was like a whole other level of pushing myself too much, and not, because I think similarly, since we are recording this in the midst of the Olympics, similarly, we're taught to just keep going despite hardship, right? And I think it's so important that we allow ourselves to not just heal physically, but emotionally, spiritually, all of those things that are just so important for us to live healthy lives. Yeah. This is so important. And I'm glad it's something that we were able to sort of discuss and bring to light today. And again, just want to reiterate, like, so grateful for the witness of Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka and some of the women of color who have, led us and said, we're not here for your entertainment. It's a beautiful and amazing witness that, we shouldn't have to rely on those kinds of people to teach us. But I'm thankful that they are there to teach us and that we're willing to listen. So.
And now that, we've gotten real already, but
Yeah.
this was our segment called Parenting Fails, Confessions, and Wins. I always want to remind our listeners that you can submit your own fails, confessions, and wins to us via voice memo. We'd love to hear your voice, or you can type it out to us on Instagram or Twitter at AutoParent. And now it's time to do a little something different. Well, we have an Enneagram expert among us, and I'm so excited to welcome Enneagram Ashton to the podcast. And I just want to talk a little bit about the Enneagram. If you can give us, we've referenced it quite often on the podcast. Most of the time, people either know what I'm talking about or their eyes are glazing over. So if you can give us just a short little, this is what the Enneagram is, this is how it's an important tool. And then I thought we could talk a little bit about like our Enneagram numbers and go from there. So
yeah. So the Enneagram is an ancient typing system. It was created about 2,000 to 4,000 years ago, so it's very old. It did not come to the United States until around the 1960s. And then the first books about them weren't written in English until around the 1980s. And so, it's a fairly new system to the United States, but it's been around for a long time. And it pretty much is, 9 different points or 9 different ways of viewing the world is how I like to explain it, where we all view things differently, and these are the ways that we're viewing them. It's different from other typing systems like Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders or love languages, where those kind of explain some of our behaviors. So maybe we are extroverted or introverted. We, enjoy a healthy debate, or we kind of, hide in the corner. Those are all behavior traits, where the Enneagram comes in and talks about the motivations behind our behaviors, the why and the how of what we do things. And so maybe we are extroverted or introverted, but the Enneagram and our Enneagram type is going to explain why, or explain those motivations behind those things. So there are 9 types, but like I said, there aren't just 9 different types of people in the world. So I think people, get caught up in like, I don't want to be put in a box. But I always encourage people that the Enneagram is actually trying to remove you from the box that other people have put you in. And it can allow you to really understand not just yourself, but other people. And maybe there are behaviors of others that stress you out or annoy you or drive you crazy. And understanding, their motivations for acting that way can be really beneficial to strengthening relationships.
Yeah, what you say is so important. Actually, so I came to know the Enneagram through the work of Richard Rohr, and as a sort of a spiritual tool, and I've realized that what you're saying about how it informs being in relationship with other human beings in a redemptive and beautiful way is so true. It's so true. And we use it a lot in our office as coworkers, and how we can sort of best be in peer and colleague relationships with one another. It also has deeply, deeply impacted my marital relationship. And there's so much involved in it, right? So there's types, and there's wings, and there's triads. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what those things are and how they impact what your type is?
Yeah, so your main Enneagram type is with you from a very young age. Most Enneagram scholars will say that you are born with your type. And so it's more of a nature versus nurture situation, whereas some of the other personality types can change if based on life experiences. Your Enneagram type will not change. So you have your type, which, like I said, there are 9 types. And then you have your wing, which is on either side of your main type. And so what's cool about the wing is you oftentimes take on some of those traits of the types that are next to your main type. A common misconception is that your wing is just your second highest score. And that's not the case unless it is on either side of your main type. So I'll go through all 9 types, but a like common mistake is somebody who says, like I'm a 2-wing 9, and that's not possible because your wing has to be on either side. So the top does start with 9, and then it goes around 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 being the Peacemaker, and when I go out of order, it bothers the ones, but to me it is order because I started at the top and that's what I do. So 9 is the Peacemaker. They're motivated by a need to, maintain the peace, maintain a peaceful environment. And then their biggest fear is typically conflict or being separated in some way, shape, or form. 1 is the Reformer. They are motivated by a desire to be seen as a good person, to be moral, ethical. It's why they're big rule followers. And then their biggest fear is to be seen as a bad person or to be evil or wrong. They're very focused on being right or doing the right thing. 2s are the Helper. They're motivated by a need to feel loved and wanted. They then fear not being loved, not being wanted, and then not being appreciated for the things that they do. 3 is the Achiever. They are motivated by a need to be valued or respected, to be competent. And then they fear typically failure. So they don't like to fail, but then they also fear not being seen as competent or capable. 4s, they are the Individualist. They typically desire significance, like creating significance, creating meaning. They also desire authenticity and being unique. And then their biggest fear is really like something's wrong with them, that they're defective in some way, that they are, not unique or that they are just like everybody else. 5 is the Investigator. I also refer to them sometimes as a walking Google search engine because they typically know a lot of things. So because of that, their biggest desire is to be knowledgeable. They want to know the things and they want other people to know that they know the things. So they like to share that knowledge too. And then their biggest fear is really like being invaded on. So having like their privacy invaded on or, being exhausted by other people. 6 is the Loyalist. Their biggest desire is to have security, guidance, to feel safe, things like that. And then their biggest fear is typically fear itself. So 6s do have that relationship with fear and anxiety, but then they also fear, not having that guidance or security from other people. And then 7s, they are the Optimist or the Enthusiast. And their biggest desire is they do want to have fun, but they're mostly seeking contentment. So they want to be content in everything they do. They're often known for, wanting to try new things, new experiences. And so that's because they're looking for contentment. And then they do have FOMO, so they do fear missing out on things, but mostly they fear being trapped in emotional pain. And so oftentimes they will bury any sort of pain or negativity, cover it up, and pretend like they're not actually feeling that. And then 8s are the Challenger, and their biggest desire is to protect themselves and others. So they do want to protect themselves. They love to fight for the underdog, so they love to protect other people as well. And then their biggest fear is being seen as weak or powerless or controlled in some way. So like I said, those are the 9 types, and then your wings can be on either side. So your motivation will remain in your main type. So for example, I'm a 2. My motivation will always lie in that need to feel loved and wanted, but I oftentimes take on the traits of a 1 being a rule follower and a 3 being driven and motivated. So yeah, that's how the system works.
Yeah. So obviously you can hear there's a lot here. And if this is your first brush with the Enneagram, I'm so glad that Ashton is the one to give you this sort of intro. But I hope also that you will continue to look into the work that she does and more of the deep parts of the Enneagram as well. So we mentioned I'm an Enneagram 1. I've never been able to figure out my wing ever. I don't know what it is. But I am curious if we could maybe use me as a case study, just since I'm here, to talk a little bit about the movement in health and or however you say it, in stress and health, or that, as well as sort of the 1 being a part of the gut triad.
Yeah. So I love talking about the triads. I think it's so interesting. So the Enneagram is also split up into 3 triads: the gut triad, the heart triad, and then the head. So it really just means that those in your same triad have similar characteristics to you. So the 891, they are in the gut triad, and meaning they receive information through their gut and then they instinctively respond to things. So they typically rely on that gut instinct to make decisions. They also all have this shared characteristic of wanting justice. So they're very justice oriented. And then they all also have some sort of relationship with anger. So for 8s, it's typically like a natural emotional expression. They don't really think much about it. For 9s, they experience it, but they bury it, and it almost comes out as like being passive aggressive. And then for 1s, they'll say, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated, or I'm annoyed.
Right.
Did I hit that on the head?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 2s, 3s, 4s are in the heart triad. So they receive information through their heart, and then they feel about things typically before they respond or make decisions. They all want to create significance or meaning in some sort of way. And then they all have this relationship with shame. So 2s, it's typically around, am I doing enough for other people? 3s, it's, am I like achieving enough? And then 4s, it's just, am I enough in general? And then 5, 6, 7, they're in the head triad. So they receive information through their head, and then they think about things before responding. I know your partner's a 6, so is mine. And so sometimes we do not get into the action step because we're stuck in our heads. And I just sometimes feel like we wouldn't do anything if it weren't for me being like, let's just do it. So yeah, they spend a lot of time in their heads. If you're listening, trying to figure out your type, and you're like, oh yeah, I overthink and process everything, you're in this 5, 6, 7 realm. They all have a desire to think things through and process things, and then they have this relationship with anxiety. So for 5s, it's typically around that invasion of privacy, or like wanting to be by themselves. For 6s, it kind of makes up their main motivation. And then for 7s, like I said before, they're going to bury it and act like it doesn't exist. I have so many 7s in my life, and I feel like I am literally pulling teeth to try to get them to talk about anything that's hard. And me being a feeler, I'm like, lay it on me. Lay it on me. I want to help, Yeah. So yeah, those are the triads. And then go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also have experienced some 7s in my life where it's just hard. My experience of them is that sometimes it's hard for them to actually say the thing, like the thing that they're feeling, to actually say it. They may be feeling it on some level, even when they're not burying it, but it's still hard to like physically say the thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's so difficult. And then I feel like I'm bothering them when I'm like, just talk to me about it. But that's because
Right.
I'm a 2, and I feel like I'm bothering everybody. And then we all have different numbers that we're connected to when we're in stress and when we're in growth. So this is why it's important to really learn about all 9 types. It's normal for us to, if we get a book on the Enneagram, right, to like fast forward to our type because we want to read about it and learn about it. But we're connected to so many different types. So we have our stress number, we have our growth number, our 2 wings, and then our main type. So out of the 9 types, we're actually connected to 5 of them. So like that's more than half, right? So for ones, when they're stressed, they will take on the unhealthy qualities of a 4. So that can look like really internalizing your emotions, focusing on your emotions, kind of adopting this like, woe is me, nobody understands me, nobody gets what I'm going through type of mentality.
Can I tell you what I call it?
Yeah.
I call it my emo ball. So when I
That's so perfect.
when I feel like I'm super stressed out, I'm like, I feel like a roly-poly that like closes everything up, and like I'm in my little emo ball.
Yes. Yep. So that's the one for sure. And then when they're really healthy, ones are really structured and rigid, and sometimes they're like stereotypically known to not have as much fun as some of the other types because they're focused on following rules and things like that. But when they're really healthy or when they're in growth, they move to that high side of the 7. So being able to like let loose a little bit, be a little bit more go with the flow and things like that.
Yeah. So I also obviously experienced that quite a bit. And my partner is 6, wing 7. So sometimes it's like when I'm in growth and he's sort of experiencing some of his 7 wing, like we can just fly off somewhere together sometimes. And we've done that. And it's been pretty cool. But okay, so we've heard a lot about the Enneagram. And I'm super, super grateful to you for sharing all of this with us. I want to talk, just as we close our time together, a little bit about sort of the value of the Enneagram, specifically in parenting, why this is important to know for those of us who parent in a partnered relationship, and what the value of the Enneagram is for parenting.
Yeah. So like I said before, it can be super beneficial to relationships. So if you are parenting in a partnered situation, then you can, first of all, understand some of your partner's motivations for how they parent, right? So, everybody parents differently. And so if you understand the motivations behind each other's types, then that can kind of explain some of the reasoning behind parenting. So for example, if you are in a partnership with a 9, they are probably not going to want to be in charge of any of the discipline, right? Like they don't like conflict. They, are the mediator. So they're going to try to do some mediation frequently. So that will be able to, so understanding if your partner's a 9, you'll be able to understand why they do the things that they do, as well as if you understand your own, you can, understand better why you parent the way that you do and really what you need from other people in order to be an effective parent and caregiver. Really, I say the Enneagram is just all about like empathy and seeking to understand each other.
Yeah, which is a beautiful gift that we can offer those that we're in relationship with, period. I especially think about, as you were saying, that most scholars agree that your Enneagram type you have from the moment you're born. There's this beautiful unveiling that happens with our kids as they move through development of sort of the peeling away of layers to uncover this beautifully crafted human. And to understand the ways in which our kids operate and work and think. I think, sort of simplifying it to, this is really all about empathy and being in relationship with one another, and the beauty that happens in the midst of humanity as it gathers is deeply spiritual. It's connected, and it's beautiful. And I think you've said it well.
Thank you.
So I would love to have people be connected to you. So I'd love it if you would talk to us a little bit about your coaching. Tell us where people can find you, find your work, because the work that you do is so amazing and deep, as you've already heard. That the depth that Ashton goes into with this Enneagram work is astounding, and your knowledge is just beyond. So I was wondering if you could tell our listeners how they can connect to you, and I hope that some of them will reach out to you directly. I know I want to have some follow-up conversation with you as well. So I would love it if you would tell us how to do that.
Yeah, so you can find me and my services at my website, which is just enneagramashton.com. I do coaching for people who are trying to figure out their type, which is probably my most popular service. Tests are always a great place to start, but because the Enneagram is about motivation, sometimes it's difficult to not answer based on behaviors when you're taking a test. So I do help people figure out their type, and it's more of like a conversation or an interview where I'm asking questions and then listening to those core like words and phrases to get to somebody's motivation. So I do that. And then I do ongoing coaching too with people who are either in some sort of transition, or they want to grow in a specific area of their type, or maybe they just want to learn more about how to be a better version of themselves. You can also find me on Instagram at Enneagram Ashton, and that's where I hang out most of the time.
Yeah, follow her on Instagram. She's constantly offering Enneagram wisdom and all kinds of other wisdom on Instagram. So at Enneagram Ashton. I want to close with this before we do our mantra. I say this to people all the time. I feel like it may be endorsed by you, but after all this stuff that we've talked about the Enneagram and it being, about motivation and whatever, like I do caution people as they are entering into some study about the Enneagram that like, your Enneagram type also isn't an excuse to be an asshole. How do you feel about that?
Right. Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
So I think it's important, like awareness coming into who we are and understanding who we are is beautiful. And there are also some types that get a bad rap, like 8s tend to get a bad rap. And there are some other, types that tend to get a bad rap. But bottom line, like this whole thing being about empathy, just remember like the Enneagram type, not an excuse to be an asshole, for sure.
Yes. Love that. Love that. So true.
All right. Well, it's been awesome to be with you. And I'm so grateful that you were able to do this with us today.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved being on.
Thanks for listening to the AutoParent podcast. We're going to leave you with a parent mantra, something you can say to yourself or to your partner, just to know that you're not alone. Your mantra for this week is, it's okay for me to be who I am. It's okay for me to be who I am. Because friends, if we don't believe that, it's going to be really hard to convince our kids. And remember this, you don't have to be an auto parent to be a good one.